Rees Ward, Chief Executive of ADS. On behalf of your industry, is industry happy with the way the government is supporting exports as a result of the publication of the Defence White Paper last week?
There's lots in the White Paper that is useful from the exports point of view. This government, this administration, has been very supportive of exports in terms of ministers clambering on aeroplanes and going and talking to foreign governments. And you cannot fault them for their effort and energy that they put into that activity. Of course, it's absolutely in line with the government's view about growing the economy. And with flatlining going on in domestic consumption, with a reduction in the government's expenditure in public service, then the only way you're going to grow the economy is through industry and manufacturing and exports.
But sorry, what specifically within the White Paper, and forgive me if you were coming to it, is a fillip for industry? Has the White Paper offered some financial support directly?
Not financial support directly, but an improved way of looking at exports and how to develop those exports. Of course, the White Paper has been a high-level document, and what we need to see is how those new processes and procedures will pan out in the implementation phase. But, for example, agreeing that the way of dealing with new developments is having industry in at the beginning of those new developments and giving advice on how those developments can be scoped for exports will be a very important part of ensuring that the products and services produced for our armed forces are also exportable. That is one element of this.
If we can move on to the SMEs elements of the Defence White Paper, can you explain how the government has supported SMEs as expressed in the document? Specifically, have the measures proposed to help SMEs engage with the MOD procurement been enough?
What is ever enough for the SME community? What I can say is the government appears to have taken on board a lot of the points that were made during the Green Paper consultation. The whole notion of having an SME champion, I think the phraseology is appointing a Crown representative. Having an SME champion in MOD will be hugely useful. Somebody that SMEs can go to and can make points to and be confident that that individual as a Crown representative will take those points up as a challenge and see them through to some sort of fruition. Again, it depends on how this is implemented. If that Crown representative has power, has accountability, has teeth, then I'm sure that will be a good thing for SMEs.
And there was another bullet point on the paper, which was a good news for SMEs, and that's that the government has said it intends to make sure that 25% of the procurement value of any project is sourced out to the SME base. That seems quite a high percentage to commit to. Has the paper given any indication as to how the government proposes to ensure that 25% is delivered?
No, it's just a high-level statement at the moment. In many ways, we have to be quite careful here. The UK industry, and particularly UK primes, do outsource an awful lot of the value of their prime contract down the supply chain. In fact, a sort of characteristic figure would be about 70 or 80% of a prime contract will find its way down the supply chain through the Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3. So I think you will find that this 25% contract by value may well be in existence already. It will be a question of actually calculating it and documenting it.
On off-the-shelf procurement, this is a central tenet of the Green Paper consultation. Unite the Union called the Equipment Procurement White Paper a stunning betrayal of UK manufacturing. Your organisation doesn't see it quite that way on the off-the-shelf procurement point. Whereas some companies have questioned to what extent it actually saves the taxpayer money, if much of the equipment thereafter needs some expensive modification from the off-the-shelf, the original equipment. So could you perhaps articulate where you see the two or three sides of this argument of off-the-shelf being finessed?
Off-the-shelf has become a very widely used and often misrepresented phrase. Off-the-shelf has been used by the Ministry of Defence for some procurements for a very long time indeed, and the White Paper in its flow diagram talks about off-the-shelf being used for example, socks and police body armour, and that's entirely appropriate. Where the market is well developed, where there are a number of competing products on the shelf, the mod clearly would go use off the shelf as a procurement strategy for that. If I were to move to the other end of mod procurements, i.e. the procurement of battle-winning, cutting-edge technologies, then you're in a different game. If our armed forces need that battle-winning edge, then it's going to have to be developed. It may be on the shelf, fortuitously, then that might be an opportunity, but often what is on the shelf is legacy equipment, having been developed some 5-10 years ago, and no longer the most up-to-date technology which our armed forces might be faced with being used by the enemy. So in those circumstances, then it would probably be more appropriate to have a development program to produce that cutting edge so that our armed forces have the very best that we can afford. In the middle, between those two ends of the spectrum, there's a whole variety of strategies. I think we need to get our mind round the notion that it's not all off the shelf. There will be development. The degree to which there is development it needs to be defined by what our armed forces need and what the Ministry of Defence can afford. What is very clear to me is if you are not developing equipment in the United Kingdom, then you're not going to have equipment that you can export. If you buy it off the shelf from an overseas country, the intellectual property will reside in that country, and we will have nothing to export.
But do you think the White Paper has adequately balanced or finessed those two potentially conflicting desires or mandates? One being an export-led recovery, driving exports, and going for a more modified off-the-shelf procurement strategy on some things. How can you have both?
Well, as I said, it's a spectrum of activity here, and the White Paper is a high-level strategy paper. The proof of the pudding will be, as these programmes come forward, whether they are developed in this country or whether they are bought off the shelf. And I think this is where I can see where the opposition and the trade unions have put their finger on the pulse. If it is all off the shelf, then I'm quite clear in my own mind that the defence industry in this country will shrink, and we will not be able to sustain the £9.5 billion of exports that we sustain at the moment, because we are not putting the development money in now, which will produce those products and services in 5 to 10 years' time.
On security, obviously a part of the White Paper's audience that ADS is increasingly responsible for or speaks for, the paper says that the government will explore the appointment of a senior responsible owner for security in Whitehall. Why is this important for the industry? And what other wins for the growing security sector are there in the White Paper?
Well, the security sector is hugely important for the United Kingdom. It produces about £2.2 billion worth of value. Very important contribution to growth and very important contribution to exports. To have somebody who sits at in a coordinating, overarching role with some power to make that sector come together and gel consolidate more, I think would be very powerful. We would certainly get better value out of it, we'd get better procurement out of it, and more importantly, we would be able to export more.
And perhaps just to finish on the very important issue of export support, I believe that the paper has committed government to supporting R&D, which I believe is TRL levels 1 to 4, to the tune of 1.2% of the defence budget. That's something like £400 million. Do you feel that's a satisfactory number, given the budget constraints the defence budget is under? And what would you say about the requirement for more funding into the R&T beyond R&D level?
I think we've got that slightly the other way around. The R&T level is the research and technology level is the base level. It's the blue skies activity that needs to go on. And it's very welcome that government has put a minimum floor, if you will, of 1.2% of the defence budget in place. That was a budget that was being raided on a regular basis because it was uncommitted and wasn't delivering capability there and then, and quite naturally became an area where savings were having to be taken given the imperatives elsewhere. I think it's a very good thing that the government have put that 1.2% limit in there. That preserves, if you will, the seed corn of future work, future science and technology work, which in turn will be taken forward in development programs. And that research and development money was what I was talking about earlier. That needs to be put in place, otherwise you default to an off-the-shelf procurement strategy, and therein lies the demise of the defence industry in this country.
Well, Rees Ward, Chief Executive of ADS, thank you very much.
You're welcome.